Welcome back. This slideshow video, we'll be talking about Chapter 3. We'll be talking about the Chesapeake, the New England, and the Middle Colonies and how they were settled, and try to look at some of the social and economic factors that were characteristic to all three of these areas. When we look at the settlement patterns, from about 17th century to 18th century is the time period that they were settled. There will be 5 colonies in the southern colonies, which would be Maryland, Virginia, North and South Carolina, and Georgia. We'll specifically look at the Chesapeake area. As far as basic characteristics of this region, um, the economy was based primarily on plantations, and they raised tobacco, rice, and indigo. These were their cash crops. Slavery will be introduced in the 1600s, 17th century, in the early part, and by the 18th century, they will be a growing part of the economy. Up until that time, primarily about 100,000 indentured servants were ferried across the Atlantic to this region. Uh, as far as upper stratification of the society, the aristocrats held most of the valuable land, um, and eventually these indentured servants will be living on the frontier. The primary church was the Anglican Church. Um, Native population is going to be treated fairly badly by the Europeans, the English, and they're going to be driven west. Now let's take a look at the Chesapeake area. In this, we're talking about Virginia and Maryland. Virginia was founded in 1607 by the Virginia Company or the London Company, and here was the settlement of the Chesapeake. Um, Basically, the London Company or the Virginia Company wanted to get rich quick, and they wanted to cash in on the gold that the Spanish had already been bringing back from the New World. Here's replicas of some of the ships that came into the port of Jamestown. Uh, the Chesapeake area encompasses a lot of estuaries, and settlements were uh, built along these waterways for transportation. There were no roads. This is a replica of the Jamestown. Um, some of the housing that they lived in. A lot of the cooking was done outdoors. They did have a chapel. 1607, an expedition is sent out, and they will establish the first permanent settlement in the New World for England. Um, as far as their main goal, of course, getting gold, finding the Northwest Passage, and to a lesser extent, Christianizing the local population. Most of the settlers were fortune hunters. We characterize them as cavaliers. The colony didn't do very well initially. Famine and disease wiped out a lot of people. In fact, the ratio was probably 8 out of 10 people died, somewhere in there. Um, so success rate of living very long wasn't very good. Usually the farming land, the plantations were about 100 acres. They're widely spread apart. Not a lot of social cohesion in the community. Each plantation was its own little settlement. The native population they tried to use them as workers, but they simply melted back into the surrounding areas, and the Europeans were afraid to go and bring them back. The settlers took from the Native Americans. This is going to be a pattern repeated over and over again, and the Native Americans are going to be, for the most part, driven out, and eventually they're going to have wars. And this will be a constant problem. Um, so they're never really that suited for plantation work. Chief Powhatan is the one who initially makes contact with the people coming to Jamestown. He allows them to stay, insisting that they leave the next year. This is a picture of Pocahontas, an engraving. She is going to marry John Rolfe and show him how to raise tobacco. Eventually, she will go to England and she will die there. Powhatan Confederacy, there were tribes living in the Chesapeake area, a loose confederation, and you can see that the settlements, the white settlements, were intermingled among them. And this is going to cause friction. This is what a Powhatan Indian village might have looked like. Some of the food they ate. Powhatan Uprising of 1622, things boil over and Native Americans attack the English because of maltreatment and, and theft and trying to drive them off the land. As far as the survival rate, what statistics we have, by 1625, about 1,200 had survived out of the 8,000 that came over. During the starving time, about 60 of the 400 settlers survived. Captain John Smith is going to take over the settlement in 1608, and he runs it like a dictator and tells people that they have to work or they won't eat. John Rolfe is going to be important to the colony because he's going to find out that tobacco can be raised, and there's a market for that. And this will be the cash crop that kind of turns things around. Pocahontas is going to teach him how to do that. Again, this is kind of a statistics. Children didn't live very long. About 80% of the children died. Life expectancy was about 40 years old. It was rare that you were ever going to see your grandchildren. And you probably would have multiple wives or husbands because they'd all die off. A picture of John Smith. He later tries to enlist with the Pilgrims, but they reject his offer. This picture of John Rolfe. He'll make the colony prosperous. Money is the thing that's going to help this colony survive, and that's growing tobacco. Here's a picture of tobacco plants. They would cultivate it, harvest it, and dry it, and it's going to be used as money in the colony. And they use it just like they would use gold or silver. You can see that the production of tobacco was very important, and in 1618, 20,000 pounds of tobacco, and 1629 there's 1.5 million pounds and being consumed in Europe and England, and very valuable. Starts out being very expensive and people making lots of money, and eventually it is not going to be that profitable. But it is going to help the colony get off the ground. So it will become the cornerstone of the population there, the jobs that people are employed in. The plantation system will be a way that they will grow this. The House of Burgesses was the first legislative body. It was represented aristocrats, the rich, but it is the first elected body in North America for the English. So it's the first colonial parliament, and they were guaranteed the same rights as Englishmen back in the homeland. This is a picture of the House of Burgesses. Eventually, the Virginia Charter will be revoked by King James I, and it will revert to a royal colony controlled by the crown. But it initially started out as a charter colony. King kind of believed that Assembly was too rebellious, seditious. He wanted more control. King wasn't too crazy about tobacco, but it was certainly a very lucrative crop, and once people are buying it, the floodgates are open, and it's going to be raised all over the colony. The next thing that we'll take a look at is Maryland, and we will look at Lord Culver or Lord Baltimore, and he's going to be given a tract of land in the New World, and he's got his own special motives as to why he wants to do that. And we'll stop right there, and this will be part 1 of chapter 3. And when we come back, we'll pick up part 2 of chapter 3.